Welcome, everyone. It's 9 a.m. San Francisco time. I'm Michael McCarthy in Boston, your instructor. Welcome to the Blockchain Nano class. We're going to get started with doing some polling to get some of your opinions on blockchain. You're welcome to put responses. We're going to do the poll. Then I'm going to ask you to chat with me, so you can either do that in the chat box or preferably raise your hand so that we can all get to know everyone a little bit better. So here comes the first question. Do you like blockchain or do you not like blockchain? Yes, you like blockchain. No, you don't like blockchain. So feel free to vote now. We've got 15 people who are able to vote. So please vote now. Yes, you like blockchain, or no, you don't. Can you see the poll that's up? Because I don't see anyone voting yet. Okay, it looks like the poll's not working. Let's just do a yes and a no. If you go into participants and do the green yes button if you like blockchain, and the red no button if you don't like blockchain. So just go into the participants box. So I see people are in there now. So team 9, Miguel, if you could let us know if you like blockchain, yes, or no, you don't. Team 15, Philippe, if you could vote. Emil, if I'm saying your name correctly there. Vadim, if you could vote as well. And Pedro. Frederica, could you vote yes or no in the participants box if you like blockchain or do not like it? Okay, so let's get some opinions out here. Let's start with Luke. Luke, why do you like blockchain? Could you just share with us in under 2 minutes something that you like about it?
For me, I don't know if it's like, when I say yes, it's not like I'm, I guess, overly ecstatic about it, but I think it's something that I'm interested in, more so because I do think this is the kind of the direction the future is headed. I think it's something where you can't just ignore and be like, I'm not interested in it. You know, if it's going to be too important and too valuable and way too many industries to just kind of be like, well, this probably won't affect me. And so I think that's more of my interest, and more of, you know, I don't want to be kind of behind the curve on things, as opposed to, you know, I'm not like trying to be the leading expert on it interested, but more so just making sure I'm educated on it, making sure that whatever industry I'm in, that I'm not I don't know, missing out on anything, or you know, missing opportunities by trying to ignore kind of the way that I think the trend is going for the future.
Great, thank you. And Emil Rawi, I see that you love blockchain. Can you share with us a little bit more about what you like specifically on that?
Hi. So, no, sorry, being funny in the morning, but I really like it because it's actually really nice that there's actually a, you know, transparency, because it's like a system that creates and records transactions made by Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, but also even like for example, we've learned with coffee bean production that now the transparency due to blockchain, you can actually there's actually, you're able to create fair pay for farmers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So yeah, the transparency, the fair pay, there's actually, the way I got introduced to Hult was being the pitch coach for the Hult Prize. The winner this year, they are doing a program in Myanmar where they get fair pricing for rice farmers that can't afford to bring their rice to their production facilities. And what they're doing is that they're taking the $1 million that they won, they're paying the farmers a fair wage, then they ship the rice to the production facility, and then they store it in a warehouse, and then they wait for the rainy season when the price of rice goes up, and that delta from the harvest season to the season where you don't have a large supply, it increases the price of rice, and that they take that differential, and that's what allows them to pay the rice farmers ahead of time. So they're kind of acting like a rice bank, but you can actually use blockchain to do that tracking and transparency to show, yes, we're actually treating people fairly, and we're not just saying it and you can't confirm it. Because I was in the food business, and there is an issue of, well, you say you're doing fair trade, but how do I know you're doing fair trade? And blockchain would actually allow you to take a peek and seeing if you're really doing that properly. Let's get one last person in here. Alonzo, you said that you liked it. Could you share with us, excuse me, Alfonso, you said that you liked it. Could you share with us anything specific about what you liked in particular?
Yeah, I just like it because I think it's super fast and smart, and you can create the whole network around it. And basically it's self-sufficient and autonomous for most of it, and transparent. And I really like the second video that we had to watch about the prosperity thing. So that's basically why I really like it. Just create a whole network, and it's, yeah, autonomous and smart.
Autonomous and smart. Okay, yes. No, there's actually a flip side to the autonomous. I was actually talking to a blockchain programmer about 2 weeks ago who was talking about Ponzi schemes that were put into smart contracts on Ethereum, and governments can't turn it off because it self-executes and it hops the nodes, so they can't find it to stop it. So it's, yeah, someone has unleashed the beast. So it's sort of interesting to see there's a double-edged sword here. So we'll actually be talking a little bit about that. So thanks for that contribution. So now we're going to go into the next polling question. And again, we're just going to be doing yes or no. Is blockchain a general purpose technology? Yes or no? So a general purpose technology that people tend to agree on would be the light bulb or the wheel. Those are things that we use in multiple industries. It's part of our daily life. We pretty much can't live without those things. So would you believe that right now blockchain is a general purpose technology? So if everyone could vote on that, you can do a yes or a no in the participant box, and you can also vote in the chat room if you like. And then I'm going to ask a few people that said yes to tell me why they think that, and a few people that said no, why they think that. And if you didn't vote, I'm going to ask you what you think in case your buttons aren't working. So Froy, if you could vote yes or no. Miguel, if you could vote yes or no. Waldy, okay, we got a yes there. Jiasheng, if I said that right, if you could vote yes or no as a general purpose technology. Kevin? Okay, so let's start with a yes. So Justin, could you share with us why you think it is a general purpose technology?
For me, I would say maybe within the coming 5 to 10 years, it would become a necessity for all the necessary transactions which is happening around the world. And moreover, the governments would become more transparent with their spending and what they receive, what they spend on things. And moreover, more than government telling, it is we the people who might demand for such a change for transparency.
I like the word necessity. Someone mentioned it in yesterday's class that she had a counterpoint of view. She said, well, you need the light bulb and the wheel, but you don't need blockchain. However, the counter argument to that is when we were all cavemen and cavewomen and we didn't have wheels or light bulbs, we did just fine without those things. So it's interesting that we may actually grow into it being a necessity. And as Justin says, 5 to 10 years, it may become a GPT once we become hooked on it, if it actually does become that good for us. And then we have Kevin. Kevin says no. Kevin, could you unmute and share with us why you feel that way?
to my understanding, I think blockchain at the moment is quite limited to record keeping and payment systems. So myself, I'm still reading a lot about blockchain and wanting to know more about it. Hence, I think I'm not really sure if blockchain itself has a wide applications for other matters.
Interesting. Now, the good news is that this is all opinion based, so there is no right answer or wrong answer regarding this. Typically, you'll call it a general purpose technology after it's been in place for a while, and people say, "Yeah, we're using it." It's basically similar to the fax machine in that one fax machine doesn't do you any good. You actually have to have someone on the other end of it who's going to make that fax machine work for you. And one of the things that we ran into in some of our Harvard classes is we had a student that actually deployed it at his company. He didn't own the company, but he was an employee, and it was in supply chain, and he couldn't get all the participants in the supply chain transaction to sign up for blockchain. They were just basically like, no, call me if you need something. And so he called me and said, how do I get this guy on the blockchain? And I thought, oh yeah, you actually, you have to get everyone in there. It works best if everyone who is a stakeholder is actually using it. But yes, I don't think it's ready right now, but 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a different story. We don't know actually where that's going to go. So Miguel, what are your thoughts on this being a general purpose technology?
Hi. So I think like it is a rather nascent technology, so I guess people haven't found its full potential yet. But then again, like what we've seen in a country like Estonia, where almost everything is online, I think they could use blockchain for almost every aspect of life, not just business or finance, but pretty much everything if they just find a way to use the technology for those things. I guess more developments have to be made, but I don't know everything there is to know yet.
Excellent. So now let's stay on to Estonia. A friend of mine was the deputy prime minister there, and I did a 1-hour blockchain video with him, which I'll be posting after this class. Let's talk about voting. So I'm curious what you think about voting on blockchain. Do you like using blockchain for voting? Yes or no? So we'll do the same poll, yes or no. And you can also use the chat room for that. Voting with blockchain. And I'm always curious about the people that say no, because I love to have a good debate. So please don't be shy if there's something you don't like about it. Ah, excellent. Miguel, we got to know. Miguel, why?
Yeah, because if you could vote through blockchain, I'm guessing this means you could vote through an IoT device wherever you are. And I know like we've established that it's really hard to hack blockchains and all that, but that doesn't mean people can't be forced to vote for a certain candidate. They could be coerced to vote like somewhere in secret, you know. But if they have to go somewhere to vote, then I guess there's a smaller chance of that happening. Like people could be forced to vote for someone at gunpoint, and that, I don't know. I'm from a developing country, so I know how messed up things can be, but yeah, that's just my take.
So here's the interesting thing about being forced to vote with blockchain for corruption purposes. So I met the Deputy Prime Minister of Estonia 2 years ago in Armenia, and I asked him about that. And they have a fascinating way to get around it. And here's basically what they do, is you can vote as many times as you want on blockchain. So you take your phone, and let's say that we're going to be voting between Kevin and Alfonso. So I really want Alfonso to win, but my boss wants Kevin to win. So my boss stands over me and says, hey, you want to keep your job? Go vote for Kevin. Okay, so I have to vote for Kevin. And then maybe someone comes along with a bribe and says, here's $50 to go vote for Kevin. Okay, but I really want Alfonso. So how do we get rid of the bribery and the influence peddling? You can vote as many times as you want in Estonia. but only the last vote counts. So that means that if someone says to me, hey, go vote for Kevin because I'm your boss, okay, here's $50, go vote for Alfonso. Okay, here's $50, go vote for Kevin. Okay, so I could make all this money by being bribed all over the place, but it's Saturday night at 3 a.m. when I should be home in private, in the privacy of my own home. My last vote is what counts. And that's how they got rid of bribery and corruption. However, there was a weird side effect. The older people in Estonia, the citizens over 65, voted on average 400 times for the same candidate because they didn't read the directions right. They thought that I'll just keep voting, and that they think that they were going to swing the election. So they kind of found that there were some people that thought if I just vote a million times for the same person, I'll swing the election. But that's how they got around it. Now, so that can take care of the bribery and the influence peddling. Raise your hand if you think there's another reason why you would not want to use blockchain for voting. Okay, no hands are popping up. Justin, can you tell us why you like it for voting?
Just like the other time when I said it brings in more transparency, it will also help in understanding as to who exactly did the voting, and there will be a database as to who voted, who didn't vote, and who are the taxpayers who actually participate in putting up the government or putting up the party who is actually ruling the government, and a few things of that sort.
Okay. Froy, would you like to share with us why you like blockchain for voting?
Kind of feel the same way as Justin. I think the transparency is a good thing, and especially in countries where especially I'm from Norway myself, and it's just more, the internet is used for more in general. So I feel like blockchain is a good way to make it. Currently, we have to go to the voting to go vote in a specific area, just like here in the US. But I think if we get a blockchain implemented, it will be easier, and maybe a higher percentage of people would vote as well. So I think just both the transparency and the I don't know the word for it, but the amount of voters would increase as well.
Excellent. And how do I pronounce your first name correctly?
Frey.
Frey. Okay. Frey, you bring an interesting point that I went to the Deputy Prime Minister with, where I said, oh, you must have had this massive increase in people voting. What was the turnout before you went to blockchain? He said, if I remember correctly, it was around 15%. It was pretty low. And I had in my head, oh, it must have gone to 80. So what did it go to? It went to 30. So it doubled, which is nice, but 30 is awful. And I said, why was the turnout so low? And he goes, yeah, we thought it would have been a lot higher as well. So that is rather interesting. I wasn't really expecting that result, but there isn't that much voting. Is there another counter argument? Raise your hand or put into the chat if there could be another reason why you would not want to roll out blockchain for voting. And I'll give you a hint. Think of the word trust. Think of the word trust on why you would not want to use blockchain. Any ideas? I got this idea from a blockchain programmer in China. He likes blockchain, he loves coding, he loves tech, but he doesn't like blockchain for voting because he doesn't think that it's trusted enough or understood enough by the population that, let's say Kevin and Alfonso are back in the election and Kevin won by a landslide and Alfonso's upset. Alfonso can easily say, hey, they hacked it. They hacked the election. And Frey and Michael and everyone else would be like, I don't really know enough about blockchain to say whether it got hacked or not, or that was the truth. But if it's on paper ballots and you can open up that ballot box and recount it, that's something that I understand enough where I would have faith in the system that I'm going to believe in that. And much to my dismay, I actually agreed with that programmer that I think he's right on that one, that if you don't like the election result, you can just claim hacking and people are going to be too confused about the technology to really trust the result or not. Feel free to raise a hand or go into the chat room if you have a counterpoint of view on that, if you feel differently on that, or a way that you could possibly get around the trust issue of someone saying, yeah, they hacked the blockchain. Like, how do you prove that? Any thoughts? Okay, let's move to the next one. So if everyone could open up the chat room, and this is also going to be part of the participation grade, please type in, what is your favorite industry use for blockchain? What is your favorite industry that you think blockchain would be really good for? And all answers are right answers. Okay, so we've got the coffee industry, okay, mobile payments, yeah, healthcare, payments, healthcare medical records, education. Our lecture is going to be on education today, so that may give you some good ideas. Banking, healthcare, finance, logistics, legal. Actually, I have a client that's trying to do blockchain in the legal industry. I can share about that. Food and beverage. Online gambling. I actually met there is a group that has online gambling on football in China, and they're just waiting for the government to turn online gambling on. So the minute they change their mind, they're going to be doing that. Food and agriculture. So let's dig a little bit deeper in here. On legal industry, Christian, can you share with us what interests you on blockchain in the legal industry?
Yes, of course. Right now, lawyers tend to open books, and these books tell them what the rules are. And the lawyer gives his opinion based on these books. But in the future, the blockchain can help, like, okay, in the past cases, this happened, this was the outcome. So based on these past cases, the best thing you could do is this. So it's a big ledger. Instead of one person giving you advice, advice will come up 1,000 cases which are similar.
So for example, let's say that I was engaged in a divorce, and you took a look at my assets, which let's say were substantial, and then you took a look at the reason for the divorce because I was unfaithful to my partner, and then you could compare those similar scenarios on the blockchain, and you could advise me as a lawyer, hey, you know what, you better settle this, because if you settle, you lose 20% of your assets. If you go to a jury trial, you can lose about 80.
Yeah, exactly that, because right now, only one lawyer is able to give you his expertise, and from the blockchain it will be coming out of 1,000 cases which are similar to you. You can say 20% of this outcome, 80% of this outcome. You can better choose this path because it's more favorite for you. And then,
What I love about this idea is that you can also do cross-industry blockchain technologies. So this idea is really good for the legal industry, but the same idea, if you look at just the architecture of Christian's idea, has already been done on public health and DNA and diseases. So for example, let's say that Frey and Kevin, Christian, and myself, that we all have a family history of diabetes. Well, we could put all of our medical history onto the blockchain and all these different variables like our diet, where we live, whether we exercise or not. And then it can return to us, hey, Michael has a really high probability of getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes because of all these environmental factors that you're doing. You're living in Boston, and you're smoking, and you're having dinner with Ben and Jerry's. But Frey, even though she has a similar background, she's doing tofu and yoga, and she lives in Norway. And so now we can take a look at these similar beginning situations, just like the rich guy that cheated on his partner. You can take a look at the outcomes. So you could take that same structure of how they're actually comparing all these different people. So you're going to be looking at tagging. And so tagging would be, okay, it gets a 1 because it's a divorce. You get a 5 because your assets are over $1 million. And then maybe you get a 12 because you were the one that cheated. and maybe you get a 14, meaning like you got busted, like there's no getting around it. Like it's not a contest. You totally did the wrong thing. And when you just put those numbers in and tag it that way, then you could start to make your legal blockchain. And from there, you're off to the races. So I'd encourage you all not to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but see who's doing something that's also similar, where I could kind of take it from a different industry. And let's take a look at banking. Waldy, would you share with us what interests you in banking?
You're all set. They don't have any.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Waldy.
Hi. I'm interested in banking because
They don't have a poll for it, but we'll figure it out.
yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Waldy.
Because I'm a little bit sick, so
Okay.
not talk that much.
We have a
I'm
healthcare
just-
blockchain for you.
Yeah, I should do that. I'm interested in banking because most of the transactions we do, there are too many middlemen who are like generating revenues for inefficiencies in the market. So for me, I don't believe that any industry should get in like benefits from these inefficiencies. So banking is one of a perfect example of that. And if we can replace, we use only banks because they're like the middleman that we can trust. But if we can replace that with this technology, will be much better, because still it's not that this trust is not only on one entity, it's among many other people. And I believe that as all the people will not allow that one makes one kind of decision without the other one's approval. So for me, it would be better like everyone need to, because we are even in a globalized world, we are able to reduce this the cost will encourage that the world can move faster and grow even better. That's my point.
Yes, there's a lot. You bring up a good point. There's a lot with when people send money back home to, let's say, a third world nation, where you could be looking at 20%. Yeah, the remittances, you could be looking at 20% on dinged with the currency moving around if it's a volatile currency. And if it gets lost, you're really in trouble. What if the person who's supposed to be receiving that money doesn't have the ability to call someone? And even if you do, what if there's a language barrier? And what if they know that you're not sophisticated? Perhaps it's grandma, and maybe she doesn't know what to say on the phone, and they just sort of bury you in the bureaucracy, and then you've lost your money. So there's a lot with remittances that can make things much fairer for people. And so yeah, there's a lot of startups that are actually doing that, and I think it's a very interesting idea. That's also one of the first things where blockchain looks like it's really ready to pop on it, because some of these ideas aren't really ready for prime time, but remittances, there's actually quite a few people taking a stab at it. And Naoko, would you share with us your interest in food and agriculture? And Waldy, I hope you feel better.
So my background is a healthcare field.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, my internet connection is not stable. So I'm really curious about the food origin, because recently in my country, Japan, the seed law of the seed has been changed. So people are really worried about what type of seed. The food itself what type of seed the food come from. So I'm really curious about it. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. If you go to, let me show you something here. If you go to YouTube and just Google Startup TV Boston, all one word, let me just type it into the chat room, Startup TV Boston. That is my channel. I actually interview startups. So I just did an interview 3 days ago in Japan So this woman is growing things for the aging population. So this is Brahmi, and Brahmi, she has an organic herb farm, and it's for the elderly population. And she has three solutions. The Brahmi is for dementia prevention. Then she has another herb that is for insomnia. And then she has another herb for something else. I forgot what it was. But diabetes, Alzheimer's, and insomnia were the three disease states. But she has this farm, and it's organically grown. So this is pure Brahmi. And this is something where she doesn't even know about blockchain. But you could actually contact this woman. She has her farm in Okinawa. And putting her information on the blockchain where you could say that these seeds really are organic, they're from this farm, and you certify that, that would actually allow her to charge probably 15 to 20% more on her products because of that. So
What I meant was not like a supplement for the brain disease, but gene-modified seed. Japan food circumstance environment is not like in the US. So the law is not conditioned like in the US. So that's why. Yeah, but thank you for sharing the idea, and I will check the link later.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up was to talk about putting certified products to certify that a seed is or is not genetically modified on the blockchain so that you can get transparency on what you're eating. That was the reason that I brought up the concept that is your idea so that people can know where the seeds are coming from?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, that actually exists. There is a startup called Provenance. I will put it in the chat room. And Provenance is doing very similar to what you're chatting about. Okay. So thank you for that. And now we're going to move into the lecture portion. And can you give me a thumbs up if you can see these slides right now? Or just tell me if you can see the slides. Okay, you can see the slides. Excellent. So what I encourage you to do is follow along with this. This is a very simple explanation of what is blockchain so that you can explain it to your friends, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding it. And when I was in Asia living there over the last 4 months, everything I did was with translators, with people who'd never heard of blockchain before. So what I typically do is explain things in analogies that people already understand. So I'm going to give you this explanation so that you can understand it, because it's actually not that difficult, but so that you can also explain it to other people as well. So imagine that you live in a town that has a public library. So most people either have a public library or know what one is. Well, for our intents and purposes, this is like a centralized database where there's only one library in town, and all the books, which are made of paper, have all the information, and this is where it is all stored. Now, there is a challenge with putting information in this format, that the library could burn. The library could have a flood, or there could be a hurricane. Someone could steal a book. Someone could rip pages out of the book. All kinds of things can happen where there's only one copy of the data, and it's vulnerable to multiple bad things happening. So let's start using this library example to try to make things less vulnerable. What if we made multiple libraries? So now we have 6 libraries in the same town, and they're in different parts of town. So in the Northeast, if a library burns down, that's okay. All the other libraries are working. In the Southwest, what if we have a library that had a flood? Well, that's okay. The ones that were in the Northwest were totally fine. So we end up having diversification by having multiple libraries, but also notice that there is no longer a central library. This is where people have a hang up. They have a very hard time understanding that there is no longer a headquarters or a central repository for the information. It's all split up. So you can start to look at these as blockchain nodes. Now, what if we connect the libraries? So now we connect them on the internet, and now they can start to exchange information. Now, if we connect these, notice again that there is no central library, there is no mainframe hub in the middle. And now you've created a blockchain when you have these 5 things. One is that you've decentralized it, so there is no longer a main library, that's gone. 2, we are synchronizing them so that when a new book comes into branch library A, it goes to all the other branch libraries. Number 3 is that they're redundant, that the same thing, like a mirror, is going to be in each of these. So if a book is checked out in the Northeast branch, it gets checked out of the Southwest branch as well. If a new book comes into one branch, it gets distributed to all the others at the same time. So basically look at the redundancy as a mirror. So the mirror can be good or bad, that if a book comes in, you all get it. If a book comes out of one, it goes out of all the others. Number 4 is the immutability. So imagine that the books are no longer on paper or ink anymore. They are written in stone and they're etched in stone. So you cannot white out the stone. It's there. So let's say Christian has his stone and he's typed in my name and he spelled my name wrong. Well, he can't just erase that and correct it. He can scratch out the misspelling and say, oops, and append it and say, here's the correct spelling on the stone. So now we get to trace back like a transaction ledger. Oh, he spelled Michael with a K, then he scratched it out and said, that's a mistake. Here's the correct spelling with a C and an H. So now at least we can go back and see what happened without things changing, without us being aware of it. Number 5 is that it's transparent. Everyone has a library card for all the branches and anyone can walk into them. And this is basically all a blockchain is. And typically when I explain it in the public library example, most people understand that. Now here are the 2 big advantages of our blockchain library system versus the old one library in town, is that now you can trust the data because now all the books are written in stone. That someone can't just rip out a page and be done with it or just change words. You know that that data is the data, it can't be changed. And for security, you know that that data is in multiple places and it can't be burned and it can't be flooded. So no matter what happens, you can have more trust and security in the blockchain library system than you can with the old way. Now, this does not stop you from putting a book onto the blockchain that has typos or a math book that says that 2 + 2 is 5. So just because it's on the blockchain doesn't mean it's right. You can put misinformation on the blockchain, and that is where blockchain is not everyone's answer to everything. You can put incorrect information on there the same way Christian could spell my name with a K, and later it needs to be corrected. So at least you can append it, but it doesn't mean that just because it's on the blockchain, it's 100% correct. It also doesn't prevent someone from maybe bribing Christian to say, hey, put Michael's name on that he's the president of the United States when I'm not. So there's a lot of things that blockchain doesn't solve, but once it's on there, and then it's trusted and secure. But making sure that data is verified ahead of time is where your miners come in, and making sure that the data is good before you put it on there. So I'm going to have a stopping point now so that anyone can raise their hand or put into the chat room, where are you confused about blockchain at this point? So just on the library example and how blockchain works, where are there some confusing points that I can clear up? Because the information now becomes cumulative. So feel free to raise a hand or just put into the chat if there's something that you would like cleared up. And it's okay to have crickets and everyone gets it. We can just keep going. All right, and you're welcome to private chat me later if you like. So I'd encourage you to either take a photograph of this or screenshot it. I'll keep it up here for a while. This is going to be really important for your team project. And now we're moving into the second and final portion of the lecture section of your team projects. So what we want to do is you can come up with any project that you want. In Canvas, we already have the instructions of what you're going to be looking for. The big thing that I'm going to be looking for is do you really need blockchain for your project? And this is where this decision path is going to become very important to you. This is going to become your best friend. So let's start with number one. Do you need to have a shared database? That one's going to be easy enough to figure out. Do you need multiple parties? Obviously, if it's just going to be you taking care of your data, you would only need Dropbox for that. But here's number three. This is the important one. Do you have people that have conflicting incentives or are not trusted? Now, trust is important. There are actually 4 components of trust, and I'm going to put them into the chat room right now. The first one is credibility, which is, do you know what you're doing? Did you really go to the school that you said you did? You know, are you properly trained? So you might not trust someone who is putting information on the blockchain if they're not trained. And so they might not be evil. Most people think of, oh, it's all evil people stealing things on blockchain, but it's not necessarily that. It could just be someone that's not qualified. So you might want to have a blockchain because you don't feel that some people who are mining or are running the nodes know what they're doing. And it's okay to want to double check them. And that's one reason why we don't trust people, because they don't know what they're doing. The second is reliability, that let's say I said to Frederica, hey, we need all this information posted Friday at 5 p.m. End of business. And I know that sometimes she likes to pop out at Friday at 3 o'clock because it's the summer weekend, and maybe 2 hours worth of data that comes in at the last minute isn't going to be put in there. So maybe I'm not terribly comfortable with the reliability that 5 p.m. Friday really is 5 p.m. Friday data. Maybe it cut off at Friday at 3 p.m. So maybe I want to double check that. The next one is intimacy, and intimacy is used in a different format with the trust equation. That's basically the ability to have a difficult conversation with someone. So we all have friends who, when you ask them, how are you doing? They always say they're doing great. And they only talk about good things. They don't talk about ever having a bad day or having to sit you down and say they have an issue with you. And we might not like to get negative feedback, but we tend to trust people more when we know that they're telling us everything that's going on very honestly. So some people may do what are called lies of omission, meaning they don't talk to you about the bad stuff that's potentially going on. And maybe you want to have someone else on this blockchain who's putting in information who will give you some bad news. So that's the next one. And the fourth one is ego orientation. This is where you get into conflicting incentives. Maybe I've got a separate agenda and I don't want to put accurate information on the blockchain because maybe it doesn't serve me and my particular incentives properly. So there are really 4 reasons why you might not trust someone on the blockchain, and it doesn't have to necessarily be that they're going to steal from you. The rest of these are pretty straightforward, and then you're going to end up at number 7. Do you want a public blockchain or a permissioned blockchain? The public one's going to use up a ton of energy because you need to have the transactions verified, and this is where you get into Bitcoin type transactions. Permissioned won't be using as much electricity. So let's say that you were the student that wanted to do something with sustainability and the coffee and making sure the farmers are paid. You might not want to have a public blockchain if you're going to be making a problem with global warming, just to verify that the coffee is actually farmed where it's supposed to. So you're welcome to think of a permissioned blockchain where you're not going to have as much energy use, but then you have to figure out that those people who have permission are really going to be telling the truth. So I would say you really need to have people on the blockchain that you don't trust for some reason. Otherwise, if everyone is perfect and trusted, then you just need a database. So feel free to raise a hand or go into the chat room if any of this is confusing, because it's really important in your final project that you have a valid use case for blockchain. The last thing you want to hear is someone saying, oh, you don't need blockchain for that. So feel free to raise a hand or go into the chat room. And if we're okay, we'll just keep on moving. Okay. Here's your business model canvas, which is on Canvas. This is going to be your guideline for making your project. What I'd like you to focus on is you the problem that you're trying to solve and your solution. I don't need you to figure out how you're going to make money at this, because a lot of the blockchain solutions could be in-house where they just make things much more efficient. You're more than welcome to up the ante and make this a revenue generating blockchain. So this could be your own startup that on its own, you have a standalone blockchain that is creating income. I'm actually going to be giving you a real-time project that I was working on in China, and you're welcome to use that. If you're someone that was talking about the banking and remittances, you could have a project that would, let's say, be in-house at Goldman Sachs or a bank of your choice, Santander, let's say, where you're doing a blockchain project for remittances, and having it be a standalone revenue generator doesn't necessarily need to be the case. So I'm flexible on whether or not it generates revenue, but I am going to be sticky on the format that you have a problem that you are solving. So now let's get into an actual blockchain project that I worked on in China. This was in the education industry. So now we're going to start off with the problem, and feel free to just hop in. We only have 20 people in the class, so you can just open up your mics and ask a question, go into the chat room or raise a hand. So feel free to pop it in the middle of this. And just notice the format that is problem, solution, revenue. And also take a look that you actually need blockchain for this, that other solutions aren't going to work as well. So here's the problem. In China, from my experience, you have a lot of fake transcripts, diplomas, and college essays, and some people are fraudulently getting into American colleges. Now, the problem goes beyond just getting into an undergraduate program. After college, 85% of all job applications have something misleading on them, if not absolutely false. There are more fake PhD degrees out there than there are earned. More people pay for a fake PhD than actually earn it. So it's a big problem, and basically it's a problem of trust. So here's the problem if we're just going to stick with China, that Chinese college applications are not trusted as much as other college applications. Let's take a look at Harvard on a specific basis for this case study. So you get approximately 20 applicants are vying for one seat at Harvard. So you got one seat, one person's going to get it, and 19 are not. Now, there is a hidden loss that is going on that people don't talk about, and I love to talk about awkward conversations that people don't want to have, and we're going to dive into this one pretty deeply. So let's say that now I'm an admissions officer at Harvard. Okay, well, I definitely just want the best person to get the seat. Now, this happens in a real-time basis. Smart people tend to apply. So you're going to get a lot of qualified people. So let's say that I've whittled through my 20 applications and 3 people really qualify. So I have this American guy, a German woman, and a Chinese guy. And all 3, let's say, are just amazing. And it comes down to eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How do you pick? And it actually kind of comes down to that all 3 of them could do well. However, here comes the hidden loss scenario. What if the Chinese application is a fraud? Now, I don't think it's a fraud, but I might not know. Now, college applications, they will typically get 200 of the same college essay every year, because someone writes a nice essay and they sell it, but they sell it a couple hundred times. So colleges actually have software that will look for plagiarism. So they can pick off multiple redundant essays, okay. But let's say something actually gets through all that software. But I have in the back of my head, what if the Chinese application's a fraud? Now, we probably won't know till sophomore year. So this person will be causing a lot of havoc in the freshman year, not doing well, the professor trying to help this person and not doing well, and everyone figures out, okay, this person doesn't belong here. By the time they figure out that this person doesn't belong, now you're in sophomore year. But what happens to the German woman and the American guy? They went somewhere else. Their self-esteem has dropped because they didn't get into the college of their choice. They should have gone, and now there's an empty seat at Harvard. and now there isn't going to be a potential success story. So it's kind of a nightmare on Harvard's reputation. So Harvard could look pretty bad if they got duped that a fake student got in. Here comes the hidden loss. Maybe I don't want to take that risk as the admissions officer. And I'm never going to tell anybody that, am I? I'm not going to say, hey, I'm not going to let Chinese people in because I'm afraid that these are fraudulent applications. You're not going to say that because that's discrimination. You could lose your job. However, I am betting that there are Chinese applications that get knocked out of consideration because of doubt. Not proof, but just simply doubt that they don't really trust the application. They don't want to take the risk of finding out that they let in someone they shouldn't have. Much safer just to let the German woman in or the American guy. And I believe that this happens a lot more than people are willing to talk about, and there are no statistics on it either. No one's really going to be chatting about this, but I'm relatively confident that this is actually happening. Now look at all the losers that are in this equation. So the Ivy League loses out by not having trusted applications because they could be letting in the wrong people, or they could be knocking out the right people that they just simply don't trust and they don't really know the right thing to do, so they play it safe and they let in the German woman. The top right are agents. There are agents in China. Pretty much every college student trying to get into the United States will have a college admissions agent. It's a private company, and they try to coach you to get into these good schools. Their business is going to go down if their students get knocked out because there's so many fraudulent applications running around, and the parents spend a lot of money on these agents. They might say, hey, why don't I just spend a lot of money on fake transcripts and get in that way if that's what's being successful. So the agents don't want the fake stuff. But the biggest loser are the honest Chinese students in the bottom right, the ones that are literally working 16 hours a day studying. And it's an absolute crime and totally unfair that they don't get into a college that they deserve to get into because someone doubts the credibility of their application. So there's a lot of people losing. It's a massive problem. Now let's make the problem even bigger. You can have the dangerous global trend that less Chinese students are accepted worldwide. In fact, Harvard was recently sued specifically for that they weren't letting in enough Asian students who qualified to get in. They weren't suing because of this specific reason. It was for other reasons, but this global trend is actually out there. But now what if it keeps going? How can China compete globally if they're not getting the education that they want? And China really, really appreciates and admires education. I believe the average Chinese family spends, I believe, 25% of their income on education. So it's really a very, very big thing that they do. And so this is something that goes completely against their culture. Even culturally, the country doesn't want this going on. Well, look at this solution. What if I could make sure that you had trusted, verified student credentials that admissions officers in the United States and around the world knew that when a student applied from China, whether it's at Harvard or Hult or wherever, you knew that what was on that piece of paper was correct. And then you could start judging that student based on their qualifications instead of wondering, is that really their essay or not? And it's an amazing solution, but it's hard to get there. So clearly, blockchain can be an amazing solution to this by verifying transcripts, essays, and diplomas. Once it's on the blockchain, after it's been verified by people that you trust, then it can go onto the blockchain, and then you can have blockchain college applications. So here's how it's actually going to work. So we're going to go under the hood. So the basic idea, the basic business that I'm proposing is to store and deliver authentic diplomas and certificates on the blockchain. There are 6 advantages. It's verified by the issuing institution. So instead of the college giving you a paper diploma, it gives you a blockchain diploma. So only they can issue it. It's now permanent, so it's on the cloud. So as long as Ethereum is going, this is also going to be going. You can have your own private blockchain as long as someone is maintaining those servers and nodes. It's going to be permanent. In this perfect world, the student will now control the diploma, not the college or high school that you went to. So no going to get transcripts from the former institution. You hold the transcripts. It's convenient because it's going to be in the form of an app on your phone. It's going to be trusted and secure because it's on the blockchain. Now here comes the digital partnership, and this is actually all real. MIT has an app called BlockCerts, and you're welcome to screenshot this and download it. It's free. So BlockCerts is your app that will allow you to receive digital diplomas that you can send to anybody, and there's a verification algorithm inside of that. Algor Block is the company that I worked for in the top right. They were the Chinese partner. You're going to have a really hard time doing business in China without a local Chinese partner, and we actually needed them to translate from English to Chinese. And also, the app was not on downloadable platforms in China. So there were lots of conversions that need to happen for BlockCerts America to go to BlockCerts China. So here are the 8 specific advantages of doing this. You're virtual instead of paper. You can't fake it. That's the whole reason why we're doing this. You can transfer credits. The student is going to be in control as opposed to the issuing institution. Again, now this is what blockchain is really good at, that now the individual, the consumer, the patient, the farmer all controls the data, not someone else on top of it. You can share this with employers. So after graduation, other people can take a look at this. It's a central location. So all of your documents, all of your verifications are in one place. Number 7 is very important, especially if you are from Syria. There are a lot of people from Syria, highly educated country, that when they ended up in refugee camps, they weren't able to prove that they were doctors and lawyers. Same thing happened in the United States. We had a huge hurricane in Puerto Rico, and document depositories were destroyed. So my parents, who live in Florida, actually met teachers who had been teachers in Puerto Rico for over 20 years, and they had to start over as teachers' aides because they could not prove that they had been teachers. Number 8 is it's going to save the college and student time and money because you don't have to spend money on having your transcripts re-verified, and also making the phone call, hey, just send my transcripts. I actually had a friend who was trying to get into medical school from Tehran in the United States, and he couldn't get his transcripts because the people in Tehran didn't answer the phone. What do you do with that? So it could be these simple things that get you in trouble, but if his Iranian documentation was on the blockchain, he wouldn't have needed someone to answer the phone. So now what we can do is that we can turn this into a lifelong learning passport, which in parentheses, you as business people think of, this is how I'm going to have a business that goes on forever. So think of a lifelong customer. So now we can help you with your diplomas and your school transcripts and your essays. That's the beginning of the business. But now what if you write a book or patent something? We can blockchain your intellectual property. What if you earn certificates and badges? Or this class could go onto the blockchain. So as you graduate from college and go higher up the food chain, we can track all of your accomplishments. Professional licenses. What if you become a doctor, lawyer, plumber? All those licenses that you are actually legal to operate in the jurisdiction, that can also go on the blockchain. Now let's take a look at control. So let's think about Hult. So Hult San Francisco could issue you your diploma, but now Hult Global could also issue your diploma if you go between the different schools. Your diploma could be held at a government, United States government repository. But what if it's global? What if we had something that was sponsored by the United Nations, where now you have a global passport? But the big one that everyone really wants and was part of the design is that the student controls it. So no matter where you are, you have your diplomas and you don't have to worry about any governing body controlling your information. So the big goal was to make Chinese transcripts the most trusted in the world. That was the big thing that we were going for. And now we're going to dive into how we were going to do it. So I was basically going to be the glue between Algor Block, the Chinese partner, and BlockCerts at MIT. Learning Machine was the private company that was MIT graduates who actually created BlockCerts and sold it to MIT. So Learning Machine actually made the app that was called BlockCerts, sold it to MIT, we wanted to do a partnership with MIT with the Chinese partner Al Gore, and I was going to be the go-between all of this. So I was basically like the networker or the glue to it all. And effectively, this is how it would look. So this woman graduates from Harvard. On the bottom right, you'd see her blockchain address. That's what her diploma looks like. It's just a bunch of, it's a hash, just your letters and numbers. The public key, that's basically her Dropbox or email account or safe deposit box where we deliver the diploma. And then this is what the app looks like. So it's just something on your phone. I'd encourage you to download it and take a peek at it. You can also take a tour. You can just Google MIT block certs, and they have videos on YouTube. So your diploma gets turned into a hash. And here's specifically how it works. So in the beginning, you're going to be getting an email from Hult that says, hey, download the block certs app. Number 2, you say, yes, fine. Number 3 is that Hult, once they see that you downloaded the app, will turn your diploma into a hash, which is basically a serial number that's unique to you. Number 4, they send it to you. And number 5, it's now in your phone, and then you can send it to whoever you want. So if you want to apply to a PhD program at UCLA, you send it to UCLA. Number 6, UCLA will re-verify that your hash actually is yours by checking it with the Hult database. And that's basically how it goes. Now, you can't just give that hash to anyone who could copy paste it, because they're going to figure out in pretty short order that you aren't that person by looking at other pieces of data. So just giving it to someone isn't going to work. Plus, your diploma is not on the blockchain. It's just a receipt. It's just the hash. And these are some screenshots of what the actual program looks like. So these would be the different issuers. So you went to MIT, maybe you took some classes at Learning Machine, maybe you did some executive ed at Small Planet Digital. Again, here's what your certificate's going to look like. And let's say that you did something at Learning Machine. This is what it looks like when they send you your diploma. You just have to import it. This is what your diploma is actually going to look like. And these are just the steps. This is going to be someone who's going to try to verify your information. One of the downsides of this technology is, what if someone wants to hire you for a job and they never heard of blockchain and they're verifying all this stuff? They might say, well, what's that tell me? So there is a learning curve here that people need to actually trust blockchain more than what they do now and understand it more to accept this as proper verification. So that's basically a PR move. You have to get out in public and say, hey, blockchain is a good thing. And these are just other things you can do with it. You can put college essays onto the blockchain as well. This is one of my favorites, that after graduation, you can put any of your work onto the blockchain after you've graduated so that you can get jobs afterwards. And notice the smartphone in the middle is controlled by the lab technician in the photograph, that all of her diplomas come into her phone, and it's up to her on where she wants to share them on the outside. Now let's talk about this being a business. Look at all the clients that we have: students, agents, universities, all the way down the line, including my favorite at the bottom, outside data purchasers. So let's unpack this a little bit. Why does a student want to be one of our clients? So that we can verify their transcripts, diplomas, and essays to go to college, and everyone trusts that their stuff is real. Now, an agent, why would an agent want this? So that they could say, hey, if you do business with us, we're going to blockchain all your information, and we're going to help you get into college by saying that your stuff actually is blockchain, because you might not know anything about blockchain. You already trust us. We're actually going to be your middleman for it. So they're going to jump onto it. And then the university would love to make sure that when it gets applications, everything has already been verified ahead of time, so that a hidden loss scenario of, should I not let this person in because of where they came from and not cause a ruffle, that takes care of that. So now everyone, the person from China, Germany, the person from America, they're all equal. And of course, I'm back to my eeny, meeny, miny, mo scenario, which 3 do I pick? But at least I don't unfairly knock a person out. So universities would pay for this. Now you're going to be my client again after you graduate, because now you want someone to make sure and verify that the diploma that you earned is actually real. And once you get out into the workforce, as you go from job to job to job, again, to counter the people where 85% of applications have something fake on them, yours are going to be pre-verified. So you might jump to the top of the list. And why not have LinkedIn say that, hey, you're a pre-blockchain verified candidate, that everything on your resume on LinkedIn is actually pre-verified. So LinkedIn could become a client. Human resources, they would love to stop calling around to colleges finding out, did you actually go to that school, and your former employer to find out, did that person actually really work there? So they would love to pay for that. So now I have corporate clients. And the biggie, and one of my favorites, is outside sales data. So let's say that Nyoka has all this information on the blockchain. She controls it. It's hers. It's private. But I want to know about people that went to Hult San Francisco. Maybe I'm some consumer person. I'm trying to sell you something, and I want to study your data. So I could go to Al Gore Block and say, I want to buy your database. It's not for sale. I have to go to my actual sub-client. So Naoka, Frederica, Gerlin, I have to go to them and say, hey, someone wants to buy your data. They'll give you X amount of money. They want to know maybe your gender, your age, what your GPA was. And you might say, no, not interested. Or, okay, you can see what my GPA is, but you don't need to know my gender. I don't want you to know that. I don't want you to know what my home zip code is. So you could decide what you're willing to sell and what you're not willing to sell. And now this platform could be income producing for you, but it could also be free, that you sell enough of your data to make the service free for you. And notice the 7 revenue streams that we have, which this is basically just a summary of what I just described, but this is quite a robust business. And here comes the partnership of where it would work. So we already have Al Gore, the Chinese partner. MIT has the intellectual property. My biggie was to align with the Chinese government, because they definitely would want to have trusted certificates. So what if I could get the Chinese government to say that I was the preferred vendor? And what if I was the vendor for a government institution that held all the transcripts? So now all this data goes to the Chinese government first, and you better not fake it, otherwise you get the wrath of the Chinese government. So that might be one of the credibility things, to make sure that the data comes in clean. Then the Chinese government is responsible for making sure that it's clean and putting it on the blockchain. Then it goes off to places where you're trying to apply. So there's different ways that you can slice this. I was really interested in having the government basically bless us that we were the preferred vendor for blockchain certificates. So we wanted them to actually be our promoters. And again, we already know the role that Al Gore and myself basically being the glue on all this. And MIT is going to be doing, let me just mute Medea here for a second. There we go. Then we have MIT was doing the intellectual property. Now, here's the funny thing. This actually fell apart at the very end. And the reason it fell apart was Al Gore Block wanted to sell tokens. So anytime Gerline or Frederica or Medea wanted to send information on the blockchain to either apply to another school or put a badge on, every time you did a transaction, we wanted to sell you a token for, let's say, $1. And that's where we would be making money. What MIT Block Certs wanted to do was to charge the issuer, meaning Hult, about $70,000 for a multi-institution, meaning multi-campus college. They would charge them $70,000. They issued a diploma to Medea and Vadim and German, and then it's free from there. And so there was no income stream. So Al Gore wanted to tokenize this. MIT was very much against tokens, because they basically said, if Al Gore goes out of business, the whole thing goes out of business. The student isn't controlling it. Al Gore is controlling it. What if Naoka doesn't want to buy a token? Well, now we're unplugging her. So it was the fact that it was no longer student controlled. It was going to be Al Gore controlled. And Al Gore didn't see enough money in the deal to continue with it. So MIT said, we're going to do it on our own. My response to them was, you really don't want to go to China without a partner and open source technology, because you're not going to make any money with it. And someone's just going to copy your information and put their name on it. And if they have a relationship with the Chinese government, which you don't, because you don't have any relationships, you're not going to do well either. And they basically said, well, we're MIT, we'll be fine. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is going to work. So I walked away from it. But I thought it was a really cool idea. You're more than welcome to take any of this information to use it for your projects. But it was interesting that it was a good project that didn't come out because of just fundamental differences on who should be controlling this data and who should be profiting from it. So it was an interesting dilemma, but you're also going to see it in other projects. So feel free to raise a hand or go into the chat room if there's any comments or thoughts or questions you have about the project or how this relates to your project. Frey.
Yeah, I think we're already doing this in some way in Norway, but in a different way than in the US, because I've been working at the admissions office for a university for 5 years.
Oh, great.
So I know the processes a lot, but we have a connected admissions system in Norway. So all the universities, they're all governmental, so they all work together. So even though I work for one university, I might help them admit people to other universities because it's one combined application. But the past 2 years, they've also started sharing the grades. So the student has to, when they apply, give us access to their grades. That means that they can get credits transferred and we can see all there. So it's kind of like a blockchain, but I don't think it's an actual blockchain. It's just the systems now suddenly speak together and we don't have to ask for physical copies of their transcripts from other universities. And also before, when you wanted a transcript, you needed to email the university to either get it sent in the mail or they would print it, sign it, and then scan it in and email it to you. But now you can also just order it through a website where if you've shared your grades, you can get an official digital copy, which has like a digital signature that's showing that it's approved. So you can send that to employers and everything. So it's a lot easier for students who is applying to either masters or PhDs or jobs. It's easy, and employers don't have to ask for the same kind of confirmation from the universities that they did have to before.
Interesting. Well, thank you for that. Let's do a quick vote. So go into the participants box and we're going to do a yes or no poll. Yes, you need a blockchain for this example, or no, do you think you don't need a blockchain for this specific example in Norway? I'm curious what your thinking is. So we've got a couple votes coming in here, and I'm not going to give away my own. These are opinions, so there isn't going to be a right or a wrong answer. But I am going to ask people who come in with a yes or a no, so that we can just get differing thoughts on it. So do I pronounce your name Frey? Say that again.
Sorry, yeah, it's Frey, but yeah, if you say Frey, it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask you, do you think you need a blockchain for what you just described?
I don't think it's a blockchain right now, because I think the system is already owned by it's a governmental thing. So it's just that the different institution hasn't had access to other institutions before. So the information is still owned by the government or the institution. It's just that suddenly it's shared between it. I honestly don't know whether it's a blockchain or not. I said no because I don't think it is, but it's also the students that can decide whether they want to share their grades or information from other institutions or not. So it's still kind of the privacy part with it. So, but they can they can grant or deny access whenever they want.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Justin has a no in here. Justin, would you like to share with us your thought process?
For me, I would say this would not be a blockchain for the very same reason what Fry was actually saying, that right now it would not be a blockchain because it seems all connected to some extent. At the same time, there is some kind of, I don't know, way how it is actually being done. But maybe towards maybe another few years, maybe Norway would have a system where it's all interconnected and there would be a lot of freedom in movement of certificates and how it is being done.
Okay, thank you. And Frederica, we have a yes in the chat room. Would you like to share with us your thought process?
Yes, I say yes because if you think maybe in the years that are going to come, if you want to expand globally, it's better to have a blockchain that you can like interact with. Take the example of the Europe or the European Union. So it will be easier with a blockchain system that with a non-blockchain.
Excellent. Anybody else, just raise your hand if you'd like to pop in with your thoughts on to blockchain or not blockchain in Norway. And Naoka, I will call on you right after this because I saw your hand up there. Okay, it doesn't seem like you really need it because you already have trusted players within the group. However, it's a nice to have, not a must have, but it is a nice to have where what if Norway used it for PR and said, hey, we are so cutting edge that your diplomas are on the blockchain. And then to Frederica's point, what if we get this figured out now, stay kind of ahead of the curve? Like, Luke is taking this class because he doesn't want to get behind the curve. Maybe Norway is saying the same thing. Let's get ahead of the curve. Maybe we call up Estonia every once in a while and ask a few questions that maybe there becomes a need, not a want, later down, and we've already gotten our hands wet with this thing. It's kind of like when email came around, a lot of people in the beginning, I was a kid when email started, and there were some people that just said, well, who needs that? I've got the post office. I don't need it. I've already got my needs taken care of. So maybe if you want to be a little forward thinking, you could put it in there and later on you could find a need. There could also be an issue of what if all of these servers were hacked and now it was on the blockchain? It may have prevented that. So there might be some back office things for it. I don't see a total need for it. I think it's a nice to have, but to Frederica's point, as time goes on, it might be something that you want to be an industry leader on. So thank you for that example. And Naoko, we're ready for your comments. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for referring me. Yeah, my question is, I have two questions about the project. For business side, business model. There is two blockchain system that is one is a public and one is permitted. Sorry, I might miss your word. What type of institution will permit the blockchain? And the second question is, I'm still don't got the relationship between mining and the type of the blockchain, because I'm familiar with cryptocurrency and mining and mining speed, but is it the same speed in other types of like blockchain, like smart contract and other type of blockchain, like the second, third, and fourth, and fifth?
Okay, you cut out just a little bit, but I think I got the first part of what you were asking was, with your projects, do you want them to be public or permissioned, and how do you decide which way you're going to go? Typically, if you're going to have something that is public service oriented, like, are these farmers really growing organic coffee? Did this fish really come out of the Sea of Japan, or did it come from a fish farm? You might want to have those to be public so that anyone could take a look at them. Now, permissioned gives you a lot more control. So let's say now we are the Norway college group, or we're Hult University, and we have those multiple campuses. We don't want the whole world seeing everyone's transcripts. We want it to be permissioned, where only students can see their transcripts, only authorized people can see those transcripts if they're trying to transfer somewhere. If we're in, let's say, medical records, we only want to have the doctors and the patients having permission to see that. So it really comes down to who needs to look at this information. If it's something private, like banking or medical or education, it's probably going to be permissioned. But if you're trying to get transparency and have the world say that you really are as honest as you say you are with transparency, you might want to look at public. Now, with permissioned, you can have a nice hybrid. You could say, for example, we have the coffee farmers, and only coffee farmers have permission to tell us what their crop is about. And only government officials have permission to say, yes, this was organic coffee and I did inspect the farm. However, the public does not have permission to write onto the blockchain, but they could have permission to view parts of the blockchain that say, yes, the ABC farm really is organic coffee, but maybe they don't have permission to look at the address for the farm or who owns the farm or what the mortgage is on the farm or what the taxes are. So the permissioned one gives you a lot more flexibility. You also use a lot less energy because, for example, with the Norway University example, if you want to have someone putting transcripts on the blockchain or diplomas, once someone's authorized to put that on the blockchain, they might want to be checked by 1 or 2 people at the college to make sure that it's correct, like they spelled the student's name right. But that doesn't take a lot of energy. You don't have to do a Bitcoin verification where strangers are verifying this information because you're already within a trusted group. So for your projects, I think most projects are going to be leaning in towards permissioned blockchains. And there are new blockchains where you can actually append them. Accenture is a company that is doing appended blockchains. I'm going to put this in here. I don't know if they've come out with it yet. And you can have an appended blockchain where you can go in and fix a mistake. So let's say, Christian spells my name wrong again. Or worse than that, says that I'm dead. And all of my benefits and all these problems come. I can't buy a house because everyone thinks that I died because they turned my date of birth into date of death or something. And that needs to be fixed. Well, maybe that needs to be appended because it causes so much trouble that I need it actually changed. Or what if a court comes in and the judge says, hey, you're spelling people's names wrong. You're saying that they're alive and dead and that they're criminals or felons and they're not. You need to change that, not just append it. So courts might come in and change that. So you could, for your project, have an appended blockchain or an appendable blockchain, meaning you can actually change the data. The purists hate this because it really goes against the whole point of blockchain, that you can't change the data. But there's corporations that have asked for this, that they want to be able to change misinformation, not necessarily for fraud, but because someone just did something wrong. So you are welcome to do that if you feel that that would help your project. Okay?
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
So now, and anyone can answer this, where are you confused? We have about 7 minutes left in class. Where are some points of confusion where you're like, I still don't get this part? Feel free to raise a hand, or you can do a private chat, and I'll keep your name private if you want to do that. Just say, hey, here's the question, but I won't say who was it if you don't want to have everyone know, which is okay. But are there areas of confusion? And this can be on anything. So this is totally open of how the project works, how blockchain works, any specific thing. Let me know what I can do to help you in the last few minutes. And while people are typing in the chat room, all this is on Canvas, but I'll just do a little recap. Your teams, you should be working on getting your teams together. They can be in groups of 4 to 6. I prefer 4 because you have less people, more accountability, less people. They are going to be self-assembled. By the end of this first class, we would like you to have teams, so please start on that. Chris Washington will create random groups if teams are not assembled, so I won't be a part of that. He will be doing that, and it's going to be a random distribution, so I'd rather give you the ability to do that. If there's any team Discord, anyone's not getting along, that actually, you can email it to me, but that's going to get bumped to Chris Washington, and he will take care of that. It's really best if you can try to work out your things amongst yourselves. And we always get this every year. I'm not getting along with my group. Can I just do my project on my own? Answer is no. And the reason is we would love to be able to do that, but we have 100 students in both sections. We just don't have the bandwidth to grade independent projects. And so then I have a private question. How can you warranty that blockchain won't have a human mistake or error? Interesting. You can't. However, here's an opportunity, because I love ideas. What if you had a blockchain insurance company for errors and omissions insurance, where you guaranteed what was on the blockchain was correct? And if it wasn't correct, you would pay out a claim. So there's an opportunity for that. And if you play your probabilities right, you're probably going to get 99% of the information on the blockchain is going to be correct. So you just take those premiums. The 1% of the time that you're wrong, you would pay that out. It's basically how insurance works. They just try to basically take in that income. So what you can do if you're the insurance company is you can put in procedures that would make you feel comfortable. So let's say I want to have a blockchain where anyone can just type in what their income is for mortgage applications. Well, the premium on that's going to be really high if it's self-reported and there's no one going to be doing a verification. However, what if I say, well, if you want your premium to be lower, you have to have 3 trusted people who I would trust. Maybe you put up maybe the Internal Revenue Service putting up your former tax returns, or maybe taking a look at your credit card statements or your bank account statements, where I trust the bank and I trust the IRS, I don't trust you. And if that's where the data is coming from, then maybe your premium would be lower. So there could be, I think, an insurance play with this, but really you have to make sure that the people who are putting information onto the blockchain, you trust them. They don't have any interest to not tell the truth, and they don't care either way whether something is true. So that's where you might want to get people from different countries or different hemispheres verifying anonymized data that such and such a person at this address really does live there and has 2 kids. And you get paid to say yes or no that that's true, and you don't care either way. And the applicant can't actually get to you to do a bribe. So there could be that. And in our last 3 minutes, the next question, and can you please explain the basic function of mining in blockchain? Mining is basically what you're doing as a miner is that imagine that you were just an accountant and you're just verifying transactions. So a miner really meant for gold miner because it's a bunch of accountants that see all these transactions and they're racing to say that these transactions are correct. So let's say a bunch of report cards come out. Half the class in this section got A's and everyone else got B pluses. Well, a miner or an accountant or an auditor needs to say, yep, all that information's right, that I'm going to be checking that what was on the spreadsheet, which we know is right, is actually going to be put on the blockchain, and I'm verifying that that's correct. Well, me and 3 other people, miners or bank auditors, are going to be competing, and the first person to get that right by doing the hash and solving the math problem is going to win and get paid for it. The other 2 people that were slower, they don't get paid. So it's basically a race. But the miners are really just bookkeepers. And I will be putting into your group a 1-hour lecture I did at Harvard last year on how mining hashes, how to mine Bitcoin. It's an hour. It's a very deep dive. It's very technical. It's very slow. It's easy, but it really digs into the data. This class is on innovation and management, so really higher level. But if you want to dig into the weeds, I will post that. Next one, in our last 2 minutes, so what I'll do is at 1:30 in 2 minutes, I'll turn off the recorder so class officially ends, but I will stay an extra 30 minutes and we can just chit chat. So the next question, this is to everyone. Do you believe that Bitcoin is actually a Ponzi scheme? Okay, well, this one wasn't private. It went out to everyone. So let's vote before I answer, because I do have an opinion. So yes or no, is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme? Yes or no? And if everyone could vote, that makes it even all the more fun. So Gerline, if you could vote with us. Frederica, Medea, Pedro, Vadim. Is it a Ponzi scheme? Alexander, Alfonso, Emil, Christian, Justin, Kevin. Okay, so we've got one yes, we've got one no. On the voting, we have 8 no's and 1 yes. I used to be a money manager, and officially, it's not a Ponzi scheme because it doesn't fit the definition of a Ponzi scheme. However, I would like to hear people that might disagree with me and have another thought of why they think it's a Ponzi scheme. So feel free to raise a hand if you'd like to throw in why you think it is or is not a Ponzi scheme. And class is ending exactly at 1:30, so I'm going to turn off the recorder, but I'm going to stay for an extra half an hour. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time.